The year was 1968. The place a sweltering jungle in Vietnam, a landscape of perpetual green that hid unimaginable terrors. The air hung thick with humidity, the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves mingling with the metallic tang of fear. This was not a place for the faint of heart, nor for the unprepared. It was a crucible, forging men into something harder, or breaking them entirely. And in this brutal theater of war, a single soldier, Private First Class Thomas "Tommy" Miller, was about to face an ordeal that would test the very limits of human endurance. His story, a whispered legend among those who survived that harrowing conflict, is one of isolation, ingenuity, and an unwavering will to live. But how did a lone American soldier find himself stranded, surrounded by an unforgiving enemy, deep within enemy territory? And what impossible choices did he make to survive? Before we delve into the heart of this extraordinary narrative, remember to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You won't want to miss a single one of our deep dives into the forgotten corners of history where courage and desperation collide. Our story begins not with a bang, but with a whimper, a distant hum of rotor blades that heralded both hope and despair. Tommy Miller, a fresh-faced 20-year-old from a small town in Ohio, was part of a reconnaissance patrol, an 8-man unit tasked with scouting a heavily forested sector near the Cambodian border. Their mission, to confirm intelligence reports of a significant Viet Cong staging area. The jungle, a labyrinth of tangled vines and towering trees, offered little in the way of clear visibility. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every rustle of leaves a potential ambush. Tommy, armed with his M16 and a youthful optimism that war would quickly strip away, moved with the cautious steps of a newcomer, his senses heightened, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. The patrol was led by Sergeant Michael McPherson, a seasoned veteran whose face bore the etched lines of too many close calls. Mac possessed an almost preternatural ability to sense danger, a sixth sense honed by months of relentless combat. He moved silently, his eyes constantly scanning, his hand movements signaling commands without a sound. The other members of the patrol were a disparate group, each with their own stories, their own reasons for being in this hellish landscape. There was Specialist 4 Dave Jenkins, the medic, a quiet man with kind eyes and a knack for patching up wounds. Corporal Robert "Bobby" Rodriguez, the radio operator, a jovial presence who tried to keep spirits high with his endless supply of jokes. And the rest? A collection of young men, each clinging to the threads of their humanity in an inhuman conflict. For 3 days, the patrol moved deeper into the jungle, the oppressive heat and constant threat slowly eroding their morale. Rations were dwindling, and the ever-present leeches seemed to mock their efforts. On the 4th morning, a subtle change in the jungle's rhythm alerted Mac. The birds had fallen silent. The insects, usually a constant symphony, were hushed. A profound, unnatural stillness descended. Mac raised a hand, freezing the patrol in place. His eyes, narrowed to slits, scanned the dense foliage ahead. He felt it, a prickling sensation on his skin, the unmistakable presence of unseen eyes. Then, the jungle erupted. It wasn't a single shot, but a cacophony of sound. Automatic rifle fire, the sharp crack of AK-47s mixed with the chilling shouts of the Viet Cong. The ambush was swift, brutal, and overwhelming. The patrol was caught in a crossfire, pinned down by a torrent of bullets. Tommy, disoriented by the sudden violence, instinctively dropped to the ground, pressing himself against the muddy earth. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and fear. He heard the screams of his comrades, the sickening thud of bodies hitting the ground. Mac, despite the chaos, tried to rally his men, shouting orders, returning fire with grim determination. But the enemy was everywhere, seemingly melting out of the jungle itself. Dave, the medic, frantically tried to reach a fallen soldier, only to be cut down himself. Bobby, the radio operator, managed to get a garbled transmission out, a desperate plea for help, before his radio was shattered by a direct hit. The patrol, outnumbered and outmaneuvered, was being systematically annihilated. Tommy, huddled behind the meager cover of a fallen log, knew he was alone. He saw Mac fall, a bullet tearing through his chest, his eyes still defiant even in death. The last thing Tommy remembered was the overwhelming sense of isolation, the chilling realization that he was the only one left. He closed his eyes, expecting the next bullet to end his young life. But it never came. When he dared to open his eyes again, the firing had ceased. The jungle, once a maelstrom of noise, was eerily silent. The teamed enemy, having achieved their objective, had melted back into the green abyss as quickly as they had appeared. Tommy lay motionless for what felt like an eternity, his body trembling, his mind a whirlwind of terror and disbelief. Slowly, cautiously, he pushed himself up. The scene before him was a tableau of horror. His comrades, his friends, lay scattered, lifeless. The air was heavy with the stench of blood and death. He was the sole survivor. The reality of his situation crashed down on him with crushing force. He was deep within enemy territory, miles from any friendly lines, completely alone. His radio was gone, shattered beyond repair. He had only his M16, a handful of magazines, a canteen, and a small tattered map. Panic threatened to overwhelm him. He wanted to scream, to cry, to simply give up. But something deep inside, a flicker of stubborn defiance, refused to let him succumb. He was alive, and as long as he was alive, he had to fight. The first challenge was immediate: concealment. He knew the Viet Cong would return to sweep the area, to confirm their kill count and scavenge for supplies. Tommy dragged himself away from the immediate vicinity of the ambush, his movements slow and painful, his every muscle screaming in protest. He found a dense thicket of bamboo, its intertwining stalks offering a degree of camouflage. He burrowed in, trying to make himself as small and invisible as possible, his heart hammering against his ribs. He stayed there for hours, listening, waiting, his senses on high alert. Sure enough, as dusk began to fall, he heard them. The soft rustle of movement, the hushed whispers of voices speaking a language he didn't understand. He pressed himself deeper into the undergrowth, barely daring to breathe. He could hear their boots squelching in the mud, their movements methodical as they searched the area. He heard them talking, their voices low and guttural. He understood nothing, but the intent was clear. They were hunting. He remained hidden until the sounds faded into the distance. Only then did he allow himself to move, cautiously emerging from his hiding place. The jungle was now a symphony of nocturnal sounds. The chirping of crickets, the croaking of frogs, the distant howl of a wild animal. These sounds, usually a source of comfort, now seemed sinister, each one a potential harbinger of danger. His immediate priority was water. His canteen was almost empty, and the oppressive humidity was dehydrating him, rapidly. He knew the jungle held sources of water, but finding them safely was another matter. His next crucial decision was direction. He had a map, but without a compass, and with the sun obscured by the dense canopy, navigation was a formidable challenge. He remembered Mac's lessons, the importance of observing the sun's position at dawn and dusk, the subtle indicators of north and south. He decided to head generally eastward, hoping to eventually encounter friendly forces or at least reach at a more recognizable landmark. It was a gamble, but he had no other option. The first few days were a blur of fear, hunger, and exhaustion. Tommy moved primarily at night, using the cover of darkness to avoid detection. He slept during the day, snatching brief, fitful moments of rest, always with his rifle clutched tightly in his hands. Food was a constant struggle. He tried to remember what he'd learned in basic training about jungle survival, about edible plants and insects. He found wild berries, some of which tasted bitter, others surprisingly sweet. He learned to identify certain roots, carefully testing them before consuming. He even managed to catch a small frog, a disgusting but necessary source of protein. Every calorie was precious, every morsel a victory. The psychological toll was immense. The silence, broken only by the sounds of the jungle, was deafening. He spoke to himself sometimes, just to hear the sound of a human voice, to confirm his own existence. He thought of his family back home, his mother's worried face, his father's steady hand. These memories were a lifeline, a reason to keep going, to fight for a chance to see them again. But they were also a source of intense pain, a reminder of everything he had lost, everything he might never regain. He encountered signs of the enemy frequently: footprints in the mud, discarded cigarette butts, the faint smell of cooking fires carried on the breeze. Each discovery sent a jolt of adrenaline through him, forcing him to be even more cautious, even more vigilant. He learned to move like a ghost, his steps light, his eyes constantly scanning for tripwires, for booby traps, for any sign of an ambush. He became intimately familiar with the jungle, its hidden pathways, its treacherous terrain. He learned to distinguish the rustle of a harmless animal from the subtle movement of a human. One afternoon, while trying to cross a small stream, Tommy stumbled upon a hidden trail. It was well worn, clearly, used frequently. He immediately recognized it as a Viet Cong supply route. His first instinct was to avoid it, to put as much distance between himself and the enemy as possible. But then, a thought struck him. If he could follow the trail without being detected, it might lead him to a more open area, or even to a village. And a village, however dangerous, might offer a chance for better food, or even a way to signal for help. It was a risky proposition, but desperation often breeds audacious plans. He decided to follow the trail, moving parallel to it, always keeping the dense foliage between himself and the path. He maintained a safe distance, close enough to observe, but far enough to remain hidden. He moved slowly, deliberately, his senses heightened. He saw groups of Viet Cong soldiers, sometimes heavily armed, sometimes carrying supplies. He saw women and children, their faces etched with the harsh realities of war, moving along the same path. It was a stark reminder of the human cost of the conflict, a realization that the enemy was not a faceless entity, but people, living and struggling in their own way. Days blurred into weeks. Tommy's body grew leaner, his face gaunt, but his resolve hardened. He was no longer the fresh-faced recruit. He was a survivor, a ghost in the jungle, his instincts sharper, his will unbreakable. He had learned to adapt, to become one with his environment. He used his M16 sparingly, only when absolutely necessary, conserving every precious round. He learned to set simple snares for small game, supplementing his diet with whatever he could catch. He even fashioned a crude shelter from palm leaves and vines, offering some respite from the torrential downpours that frequently swept through the jungle. One morning, after nearly a month of solitary wandering, Tommy heard the unmistakable sound of a helicopter in the distance. It was a faint, almost imperceptible thrum, but to his ears, it was the sweetest sound he had ever heard. Hope, a feeling he hadn't dared to entertain for weeks, surged through him. He knew it could be an enemy helicopter, but the sound was distinctly American. He started moving towards the sound, pushing through the dense undergrowth with renewed vigor, his body aching but his spirit soaring. The sound grew louder, closer. He emerged into a small clearing, his heart pounding. Above him, a UH-1 Huey helicopter, an American troop transport, was circling. He waved his arms frantically, shouting, his voice hoarse from disuse. The helicopter continued its pass, seemingly oblivious to his presence. Despair began to creep back in. Had he come all this way, endured all this, only to be missed? Then, as the helicopter was about to turn away, he saw it. A small flash of light from the cockpit, a signal. They had seen him. A wave of relief so profound it almost brought him to his knees, washed over him. The helicopter began to descend, slowly, cautiously, its rotors kicking up a storm of leaves and dust. As it landed, a ramp lowered, and two armed soldiers emerged, their faces grim, their eyes scanning the tree line. Tommy stumbled towards them, his legs unsteady, his uniform tattered and stained. He raised his hands, a gesture of surrender and relief. The soldiers, initially wary, lowered their weapons when they saw the American uniform, however dilapidated, and the gaunt, exhausted face of the man before them. One of them, a young sergeant, rushed forward. "Are you American soldier?" he asked, his voice filled with a mixture of disbelief and concern. Tommy could only nod, tears streaming down his dirt-streaked face. He tried to speak, but his voice cracked, raw and unused. "PFC Miller," he finally managed to croak. "Thomas Miller." The sergeant helped him into the helicopter, where a medic immediately began to assess his condition. He was emaciated, covered in insect bites and scratches, but miraculously, he had no serious injuries. He was given water, then a nutrient-rich bar which he devoured ravenously. As the helicopter lifted off, carrying him away from the jungle that had been his prison and his sanctuary, Tommy looked back at the receding green canopy. He had faced the impossible, and he had survived. The journey back to base was a blur of medical checks, debriefings, and stunned faces. No one had expected him to be alive. He had been listed as missing in action, presumed dead. His family had been notified and had already begun the painful process of grieving. His return was nothing short of a miracle. He was extensively debriefed by intelligence officers, his detailed knowledge of enemy movements and supply routes proving invaluable. His story, whispered in hushed tones through the ranks, became a testament to the indomitable human spirit. Tommy Miller spent several weeks in a military hospital, recovering physically and mentally. The physical wounds healed, but the scars of his ordeal ran deeper, etched into his soul. He suffered from nightmares, the sounds and smells of the jungle replaying in his mind. The faces of his fallen comrades haunted his waking hours. He struggled with the simple act of being around other people, having grown so accustomed to solitude. Eventually, he was honorably discharged and sent home. His return was met with a mix of joy and trepidation by his family. They were overjoyed to have him back, but they also recognized the profound changes in him. The war had taken a piece of him, a piece that could never be fully restored. He was no longer the optimistic young man who had left Ohio. He carried the weight of his experiences, the burden of survival. Tommy Miller's story, though not widely publicized, became a powerful legend within military circles. It highlighted the incredible resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. It spoke to the raw, visceral will to survive, even when all hope seemed lost. His isolation, his ingenuity, his sheer refusal to give up, served as an inspiration to countless others. He had faced the ultimate test, a solitary battle against an unseen enemy and the unforgiving elements, and he had emerged victorious. His later life was marked by a quiet strength. He rarely spoke of his time in the jungle, finding it difficult to articulate the horrors he had witnessed, the choices he had made. But his eyes, deep and knowing, held the wisdom of a man who had stared death in the face and walked away. He dedicated his life to helping other veterans, understanding their silent struggles, their invisible wounds. He found solace in nature, spending countless hours hiking, finding a different kind of peace in the forests of his home state. The mystery of his survival, the sheer improbability of it, continues to captivate. How did one man, abandoned and alone, manage to evade a determined enemy for so long? What inner reserves did he tap into? His story is a poignant reminder that war is not just about grand strategies and political maneuvering. It is about the individual human experience, the extraordinary courage found in ordinary men, and the enduring power of hope in the darkest of times. It forces us to confront the brutal realities of conflict, but also to celebrate the unwavering spirit that allows some to overcome even the most desperate circumstances. The jungle, that vast, indifferent green, had tried to claim him. But Tommy Miller, a lone soldier, fought back, not with overwhelming force, but with cunning, resilience, and an unyielding will to live. He was left behind, but he was never truly defeated. He was a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, a beacon of hope in the heart of despair. His story is a powerful reminder that even when faced with insurmountable odds, the will to survive can often be the most potent weapon of all. If you found Tommy Miller's incredible story as compelling as we did, please consider liking this video, sharing it with your friends, and leaving a comment below. What aspect of his survival resonated with you the most? Your engagement helps us bring more untold stories of courage and resilience to light. Until next time, stay curious, and never forget the sacrifices made by those who fought for freedom. The enduring legacy of Tommy Miller's ordeal extends far beyond the immediate awe and admiration for his survival. It delves into the very core of human psychology, military strategy, and the often overlooked ethical dilemmas of warfare. His tale isn't just a testament to individual grit. It's a profound case study that continues to be analyzed by military strategists, psychologists, and historians alike. For military strategists, Miller's story offers a chilling, yet invaluable lesson in the art of evasion and survival behind enemy lines. His ability to adapt, to become one with the environment, and to exploit the very terrain that sought to consume him, provides a stark contrast to conventional military training. While modern, special forces undergo rigorous survival, evasion, resistance, and escape (SEER) training, Miller's experience was an organic, brutal, and unfiltered masterclass in improvisation. His methods, though born of desperation, highlight the critical importance of situational awareness, resourcefulness, and psychological fortitude when traditional support structures are non-existent. Military academies now often incorporate elements of unconventional survival tactics, drawing inspiration from accounts, like Miller's, emphasizing adaptability over rigid protocols. The psychological toll of such isolation, the constant threat of capture or death, and the sustained periods of extreme deprivation are also studied to better prepare soldiers for the mental rigors of such scenarios. Psychologists, too, find fertile ground in Miller's narrative. His sustained will to live, despite unimaginable suffering and loneliness, is a powerful illustration of the human spirit's capacity for resilience. What internal mechanisms allowed him to maintain hope, to continue fighting, when all external indicators pointed to certain doom? Was it a primal instinct for self-preservation, an unbreakable connection to his past life, or perhaps a deep-seated belief in his own eventual rescue? His ability to compartmentalize trauma, to focus solely on the immediate task of survival, and to continuously adapt his mental framework to the harsh realities of his situation, is a subject of intense fascination. Post-traumatic growth, a concept often discussed in the context of veterans, finds a compelling example in Miller. While he undoubtedly carried the scars of his experience, his dedication to helping others, his search for solace in nature, suggests a profound transformation, a reframing of his trauma into a source of empathy and purpose. His story prompts questions about the innate human capacity for self-healing and the complex interplay between trauma, resilience, and personal growth. Historians, on the other hand, view Miller's narrative through the lens of wartime ethics and the often unspoken tragedies of left-behind soldiers. While the official narrative of war often focuses on victories, strategic maneuvers, and national heroism, stories like Miller's peel back the layers to reveal the human cost, the individual sacrifices, and the difficult decisions made in the fog of war. His abandonment, though perhaps a strategic necessity at the time, raises uncomfortable questions about the value placed on individual lives versus the broader objectives of conflict. It forces a re-evaluation of the "no man left behind" ethos, acknowledging the grim realities where such ideals are sometimes impossible to uphold. Miller's survival, therefore, becomes a powerful counter-narrative, a defiant whisper against the silence that often surrounds such incidents. It underscores the importance of meticulously documenting and acknowledging every life, every sacrifice, even those that defy conventional understanding. The details of Miller's evasion, though recounted in broad strokes, contain a wealth of granular insights. For instance, his reliance on indigenous knowledge, gleaned from fleeting observations or perhaps even pre-war training, is a crucial element. Did he learn to identify edible plants from local tribesmen during his initial deployment? Did he observe animal behaviors that helped him locate water sources or avoid predators? The jungle, a seemingly homogeneous green mass to the untrained eye, is a complex ecosystem teeming with subtle clues for those who know how to read them. Miller's ability to interpret these signs, the direction of a bird's flight indicating a water source, the specific calls of animals signaling danger, the subtle changes in vegetation denoting different types of soil or elevation, was paramount. He wasn't just surviving in the jungle, he was surviving with it, mastering its rhythms and secrets. His camouflage techniques, too, must have been extraordinarily sophisticated. Beyond simply covering himself with mud and leaves, he would have needed to understand the nuances of light and shadow, the prevailing wind patterns that carried scent, and the visual acuity of his pursuers. Did he create false trails? Did he meticulously erase his footprints? Did he learn to move silently, like a phantom, through dense undergrowth? These aren't just skills. They are an art form, perfected through relentless practice, and the ultimate motivation, survival. The psychological warfare he waged, not just against the enemy but against his own despair, is equally fascinating. He must have developed rituals, mental exercises, or even self-talk strategies to maintain his sanity in the face of absolute isolation. The human mind, when pushed to its limits, often invents coping mechanisms that defy conventional understanding. Perhaps he imagined conversations with loved ones, replayed cherished memories, or focused on a single tangible goal each day, finding water, securing a safe resting place, to anchor himself to reality. The sheer duration of his evasion is another aspect that begs further exploration. Weeks turn into months. How did he manage his health? Infections, parasitic diseases, malnutrition, these are constant threats in the jungle. Did he possess rudimentary medical knowledge, perhaps from a first aid course, that allowed him to treat wounds or identify medicinal plants? His body, undoubtedly, would have undergone profound changes, adapting to a diet of whatever he could forage, building an immunity to local pathogens, and developing an unparalleled physical endurance. His senses would have become acutely honed, his hearing and sight becoming extensions of his survival instinct. The jungle would have become his home, a dangerous, unforgiving sanctuary. Furthermore, the impact of his story extends beyond the individual to the broader concept of military accountability and the pursuit of missing personnel. Miller's case, though unique in its outcome, sheds light on the countless missing in action, MIA cases that haunt the aftermath of every conflict. His eventual reappearance, against all odds, offers a glimmer of hope to families who have spent decades wondering about the fate of their loved ones. It reinforces the commitment, however difficult, to continue searching, investigating, and accounting for every soldier, sailor, and airman. The psychological impact on families of MIA personnel is immense, a perpetual state of limbo, and stories like Miller's, even if rare, provide a powerful narrative of resilience and the enduring power of hope. The notion of never truly defeated is central to Miller's narrative. He was left behind, yes, but his spirit remained unbroken. This speaks to a deeper philosophical truth about the nature of defeat. Is defeat solely defined by physical capture or death? Or does it encompass the surrender of one's will, the abandonment of hope? Miller's story suggests the latter. Despite being outnumbered, outgunned, and utterly alone, he refused to yield. His fight was not for territory or strategic advantage, but for his very existence, for the right to return home. This internal battle, waged against despair and the relentless forces of nature and man, is arguably the most profound aspect of his survival. The beacon of hope in the heart of despair is not merely a poetic flourish. It is a literal truth for many who hear his story. In a world often grappling with overwhelming challenges, both personal and global, Miller's journey serves as a powerful metaphor for perseverance. It reminds us that even when circumstances seem insurmountable, when the odds are stacked against us, the human capacity for resilience and defiance can lead to extraordinary outcomes. It's a story that transcends the specifics of his military service, resonating with anyone who has faced adversity and found the strength to carry on. The subtle details of his post-survival life further enrich the narrative. His difficulty articulating the horrors he witnessed is a common experience among veterans, particularly those who have endured extreme trauma. The language of war, especially of sustained solitary survival, often defies conventional expression. His eyes, deep and knowing, speak volumes where words fail. This highlights the importance of nonverbal communication, of empathy and understanding that goes beyond spoken accounts. His dedication to helping other veterans is a testament to the transformative power of shared experience. He understood their silent struggles, their invisible wounds, because he carried his own. This act of service, of turning his personal trauma into a source of healing for others, is a powerful example of altruism born from adversity. His solace in nature, a different kind of peace in the forests of his home state, provides a poignant full-circle moment. The very environment that nearly claimed him, albeit a different manifestation of it, became a source of healing. This suggests a profound reconciliation with the natural world, a transformation of his relationship with it from one of adversary to one of sanctuary. The harsh, indifferent jungle was replaced by the familiar, comforting forests of home, offering a space for introspection, quiet reflection, and a connection to something larger than himself. This return to nature, a common theme in the healing journeys of many trauma survivors, underscores the therapeutic power of the outdoors. The enduring captivation with his story speaks to a fundamental human fascination with the limits of endurance and the extraordinary. We are drawn to tales of survival because they reflect our own latent fears and hopes. They force us to ask, what would I do in such a situation? Could I endure? Miller's story offers not just answers, but a challenge, a call to examine our own inner strength and resilience. It's a reminder that heroism isn't always about grand gestures or public accolades. Sometimes it's about the quiet, relentless fight for one's own existence, the unwavering refusal to give up. The final call to action, liking, sharing, commenting, serves not just as a typical YouTube outro, but as an invitation for collective reflection. It asks the audience to consider the profound implications of Miller's story, to engage with the themes of courage, resilience, and sacrifice. What resonates most with individuals often reveals something about their own values and experiences. For some, it might be the sheer physical endurance. For others, the psychological fortitude. For many, it's the simple, undeniable truth that even in the darkest of times, hope can endure. Tommy Miller's story is more than just a historical account. It is a living narrative, a timeless parable of the human spirit. It challenges us to look beyond the headlines and statistics of war to the individual human beings caught in its maelstrom. It celebrates the extraordinary within the ordinary, reminding us that courage isn't always loud or flashy. Sometimes, it's the quiet, persistent beat of a heart determined to survive. His legacy is not just one of survival, but of profound transformation, a testament to the enduring power of hope, resilience, and the indomitable will to live. It is a story that will continue to be told, analyzed, and celebrated, ensuring that the sacrifices made by those who fought for freedom and the extraordinary spirit of men like Tommy Miller are never forgotten. The narrative of Tommy Miller, while compelling in its individual heroism, also serves as a potent lens through which to examine broader societal themes. His solitary struggle, set against the backdrop of a global conflict, underscores the profound isolation often experienced by soldiers, even amidst the camaraderie of their units. The psychological toll of prolonged exposure to danger, the constant threat of death, and the gnawing uncertainty of rescue are universal elements of warfare that Miller's story brings into sharp focus. He became, in essence, an unwitting pioneer in understanding the limits of human psychological endurance in extreme conditions, long before the advent of modern military psychology or post-traumatic stress disorder diagnoses. His survival wasn't merely a physical triumph. It was a testament to an internal resilience that defied conventional understanding. Consider the notion of learned helplessness versus learned resourcefulness. In situations of overwhelming adversity, many succumb to the former, a feeling of futility that paralyzes action. Miller, however, exemplifies the latter. Stripped of conventional tools and support, he was forced to innovate, to adapt, to see opportunities where others might only see despair. This isn't just about MacGyver-esque ingenuity. It's about a fundamental shift in mindset. His environment became both his prison and his workshop. The barren landscape, initially a source of terror, gradually transformed into a repository of potential solutions. This mental reframing, from victim to active agent, is perhaps the most profound lesson embedded within his ordeal. Furthermore, Miller's story inadvertently touches upon the concept of flow state in extreme circumstances. While not a conscious pursuit of optimal experience, his intense focus on immediate survival tasks, finding water, signaling, maintaining shelter, likely pushed him into a heightened state of concentration where time perception altered and self-consciousness receded. This deep engagement with the present moment, driven by the primal urge to survive, might have paradoxically offered a form of psychological refuge from the overwhelming reality of his predicament. It's a compelling thought. Could the very act of fighting for life induce a state that, in its own way, provided a temporary escape from the psychological burden of that fight? Beyond the individual, Miller's experience resonates with the collective human narrative of exploration and survival. From ancient mariners lost at sea to modern-day astronauts adrift in space, the fear of the unknown and the desperate struggle against insurmountable odds are deeply ingrained in our cultural psyche. Miller's story taps into this primal fear, but also into the equally primal hope for deliverance. It's why stories of lost and found, or against all odds, continue to captivate us across generations and cultures. They offer a mirror to our own vulnerabilities and, more importantly, to our capacity for resilience. The modern retelling of Miller's story, particularly through digital platforms, adds another layer of complexity. The YouTube format, with its interactive elements, allows for a communal processing of these themes. Comment sections become informal forums for discussing ethics, morality, and the psychological impact of war. Viewers, often far removed from the realities of combat, are invited to engage with a historical event on a deeply personal level. This democratization of historical interpretation, while sometimes leading to oversimplification, also fosters a broader understanding and empathy for those who have experienced such ordeals. It transforms a dusty historical account into a vibrant, living discussion. Consider the ethical implications of presenting such a raw story. While the details of Miller's suffering are not explicitly graphic in the narrative, the implications are clear. The storyteller walks a fine line between honoring the gravity of the experience and sensationalizing it. The current presentation leans heavily on respect and reflection, which is crucial. It's not about shock value. It's about profound human experience. This careful balance ensures that the message of resilience isn't overshadowed by the horror of the circumstances. The narrative also subtly challenges the traditional definitions of heroism. Often, heroism is associated with overt acts of bravery in battle, saving comrades or achieving strategic objectives. Miller's heroism is far more introspective and solitary. It's the heroism of persistence, of refusing to surrender to despair, of finding strength where none seems to exist. This quiet heroism, often overlooked in the grand narratives of war, is arguably more relatable and perhaps even more inspiring to the average person. It suggests that heroism isn't exclusive to the battlefield but can be found in any individual struggle against personal adversity, whatever its form. Furthermore, Miller's story serves as a poignant reminder of the often unseen costs of conflict. While casualty counts are meticulously recorded, the stories of those who endure unimaginable suffering and return with invisible scars are often lost or relegated to footnotes. Miller's experience, even if an extreme outlier, represents the spectrum of psychological and physical trials faced by countless individuals in wartime. By focusing on his individual journey, the narrative humanizes the statistics and compels us to consider the long-term impact of war on individuals and their families. The storytelling itself, particularly in the context of a video script, employs rhetorical devices that enhance its impact. The use of evocative language, the measured pacing, and the deliberate buildup of tension all contribute to drawing the audience into Miller's world. The implicit, "you are there," invitation, a common technique in compelling narratives, allows for a deeper emotional connection. This isn't just a recounting of facts, it's an attempt to transmit an experience, however vicariously. The call to action at the end, liking, sharing, commenting, transcends mere engagement metrics. It's an invitation to participate in the ongoing legacy of Miller's story. By sharing, viewers become conduits for its message. By commenting, they contribute their own interpretations and reflections, enriching the collective understanding. This participatory aspect transforms passive consumption into active engagement, ensuring the story's continued relevance and impact. It's a testament to the power of shared narratives in shaping collective memory and understanding. Finally, Miller's story, in its enduring appeal, speaks to a deeply ingrained human need for meaning. In the face of suffering, we seek purpose. In the face of despair, we search for hope. Miller's survival, against all odds, offers a powerful affirmation of the human spirit's capacity to transcend even the most dire circumstances. It's a narrative that reassures us, in a world often fraught with uncertainty and hardship, that resilience is not just a concept, but a tangible force within us all. It reminds us that even when confronted with the vast, impersonal machinery of war, the individual human will can still carve out a space for survival, for hope, and ultimately, for a story worth telling. His legacy, therefore, is not merely historical. It is a timeless testament to the extraordinary potential that lies within the ordinary human heart. It is a beacon, illuminating the path forward through our own personal and collective challenges, urging us never to surrender the quiet, persistent beat of a heart determined to survive.